This is Michael Blackstone with Lee Talk Radio, and we are with Lee County Sheriff Gary Parsons for the Sheriff Show. And Gary, today we want to talk about, give us some insight. You've been with the Sheriff's Office for how many years now?
34.
34 years. And as our elected sheriff for...
Almost 25. Be 2 months and I'll be
Okay.
25.
So there's only, what, a couple sheriffs in the state that have been, in office longer?
That's correct, yeah.
So you started in the sheriff's officer as a deputy,
I did.
and then you went in after several years of that. You went into investigations and then so on. So give us some insight. 2021, we see things all over the news all the time across the nation. Viewpoints towards cops, and what they have, the stresses they're going through. Tell us the day-to-day lifestyle of a deputy sheriff in Lee County, Virginia. What do they have to do to get their mental mindset right and be able to protect and serve the general public?
Okay, well, to give you a little background before we talk about that is that I've got around 18 road officers, but I've probably never got 18 on the road because someone's on vacation or someone's in the academy or someone's sick. So as a rule, if I can have 3 officers on the road at any given time, that's a pretty good number. I mean, sometimes we'll have 4. In the summer, we have more because the school resource officers do that. So they're 444 square miles, 3 officers. They're pretty covered up. We have the county divided into 4 areas, and that was done even before I became sheriff. Sheriff Chadwell divided it. We have the western end, what we call the middle area, which is the western end is everything from the Burning Well West. The middle area is everything from Burning Well to the hospital out in Pennington, and that includes Blackwater and Oconeta and all that. What we call the upper area is Dryden, Woodway, Jasper, and then we have the St. Charles, Keokee area. And then sometimes we don't have enough people to work every one of those areas. So to give you an idea, that's how much territory they're having to cover. These officers take a lot of ridicule because they didn't get there in time and all that. But if you consider the logistics of it, it's hard to get there. The geographic problems. I tell people all the time that if you call, we'll get there as quick as we can. And we may be fortunate we're 5 minutes away, but it could be 30 minutes away. So whatever situation you're dealing with, anticipate it could be that long before we arrive. But these officers are, I think I've got a very good group of officers. They like I say, they get talked to pretty rough sometimes, but my philosophy is, and then you can ask any of them, I tell them when we have meetings, that we should treat everyone with respect and dignity. Everyone that gets arrested is not a bad person. You ought to be able to arrest somebody today and meet them on the streets tomorrow and shake their hands if you treat them with respect. And we try to do that with people who allow us to do that. As everyone knows, or some people just won't allow you to be good to them. But and people see officers and they say, well, all they're doing is running up and down the road. And sometimes we run a little too fast. I understand that, and I discourage that. But keep in mind that every call is not a blue light running call. You may have someone in one part of the county that had their mailbox tore down, and you've got to go take that report and take care of that person. But you may have somebody in the other part of the county that had a break-in, they stole everything in their house. And so we're trying to get to all those calls. And I tell the officers that, even though it's the mailbox torn down, on that given day, that's the most important thing in that person's, way they're looking at it. That's my crime today.
Right.
They don't realize that somebody up the road just had everything they owned stolen, or there was a fight, somebody was stabbed. All they know about is what's going on with them right then. And you need to treat every one of these situations as if it's as important as the bigger case. So, I think we are respectful to people, and I encourage people. If an officer's not respectful or doesn't do their job, call on me, and we'll address it, and we'll address it with the officer because, I don't want anybody disrespected in the county, and I don't think we do that. I get the calls I get usually when I look into it, they're false calls. And I'm not saying that's always the case, but now we have body cameras. So there's no reason to call and say that an officer cussed you or an officer slapped you because I've got the body camera right there on them. I've also got GPS in their car. I know everywhere that car went. I know how long it sat. I know how much it idled. I know every time it went over the speed limit. I've got all that documented. So, if it's a legitimate call, call us and we'll address it. But there's no reason to, get your feelings hurt over something and call and say this happened, because we can prove it or disprove it.
Right. That whole bad cop or corrupt cop. Not that there's not issues, but when you have body cameras and you have the tracking equipment that
Yeah.
you've got, it limits the ability for that kind of behavior to.
Yeah, I got body cameras early on because I didn't look at them as much. It is a way to protect the citizen, but it's also a way to protect the officer.
Right.
That if somebody says this officer did something, the body camera is the evidence there, and I'm very glad we have them. Like I say, we were one of the first agencies around to get them.
Right. So what level of violent or personal threatening type of calls do they get?
We get a lot of domestic calls, and everybody will tell you the domestics are the most dangerous situation you go into because,
Right.
Emotions are high, and you just don't know. And every call you drive into, you don't know who's got a gun in the house, who's got a gun outside the house. Every call has a potential for a fatality, either with a citizen or with an officer. So, it is stressful if you think about it. We're fortunate in Lee County. We don't have a lot of things that they have in the cities, but everything that happened in the cities can happen here.
Right.
It's just not as often. And so, if you think about the stress of rolling into houses, going up on calls, a fight's going on, you have no idea who has a knife, who has a gun, and you do that 3, 4, 5 times a day. Pretty stressful. We're fortunate that we don't have a lot of homicides in the county. We'll have 2, 3 maybe a year. That's a bad year, but it's unfortunately we have a lot of suicides. Suicides are very emotionally straining too. The situations you see, and what people have done to themselves, and also dealing with families, the families there, and there's it's very stressful job even on good days, because you're dealing with a lot of situations that people tell you things that they won't tell their pastor, and the old sheriff who hired me, his saying was that being a police officer is like having a front row seat to the greatest show on earth, because you're right there in the front of everything and you see things that sometimes you don't want to see.
Right. Well, that's awesome, and obviously you've got outlets for the officers if they are feeling a little too stressed, they can talk to somebody, and
We'd certainly make that available to them. And I'm an old-fashioned department. I'm probably one of the only departments still left that doesn't do psychologicals on officers when I hire them, and because we're here in Lee County, we know each other, and
Right.
I don't have to do a psychological. I can just call a few people and say, hey, do you know this guy or this gal, and what's their background, and I can pretty much get a quick assessment of what kind of person I'm dealing with.
Gotcha. That's awesome. We'll call this a wrap for this week's Sheriff Show, and look forward to more upcoming stuff from you. Thank you, Gary Parker.
Thank you.
Yep.